Let's talk about Democrats and Teamsters. Over the last year, if you will, there's been some points of contention. Sean O'Brien, the Teamsters president, he spoke at the Republican National Convention. That infuriated lots of Democrats, and he's not allowed to speak at the Democratic National Convention. Then the Teamsters did not endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. He comes out and says that she was arrogant, was expecting their endorsement. Well, this week, that they also now are donating to a number of Republicans through their political action committee. At a high energy rally this week called Benefits Over Billionaires in Atlanta, California Congressman Khanna talked to a couple of hundred progressives at Teamsters Local 728 Hall, criticized the Trump tax cuts, called out Democrats for failing to deliver higher wages, and said that Democrats must do more for working people. He joins us right now. So, Congressman Khanna, this is what I saw a lot of reaction on social media, and I'm trying to understand. Democrats saved the ass of the Teamsters pension. That was Biden. That was Harris. That was Democrats in the House, in the Senate. It wasn't Republicans. And so we're talking about billions of dollars of pensions being saved. And so what I've heard from other people is saying, wait a minute, this is how you reward your friends? When Democrats took care of those pensions and O'Brien turns around and cozies up to Republicans?
Well, look, first of all, the President Biden and Vice President Harris had one of the most pro-labor administrations in modern history. They helped with my votes and others in Congress save the pensions. They pushed for the American Rescue Plan, the PRO Act, which would have given labor the strongest protections past the House. President Biden walked the picket line. But there are places that we've disappointed the Teamsters, most importantly in my home state. That was what I was talking about. I mean, the whole clip wasn't played. Twice there was legislation that came that said you need to have truck drivers protected over self-driving cars. And I, as a representative of Silicon Valley, stood with the Teamsters, Lorena Gonzalez, Sean O'Brien, and twice the governor vetoed that legislation. And they wanted more Democrats to speak out forcefully for that legislation. In 31 states in this country, truck driving is the biggest job. The second thing is, look, the Democrats have had a mixed record on labor. It was trucking deregulation starting in the late 70s and early 80s that hollowed out the working class. It was NAFTA that hollowed out the working class, white and black. It was China's ascension into the World Trade Organization that hollowed out the working class without.
I gotta stop you right there, because here's the problem with NAFTA. I'm born and raised in Texas, and the reality is, depending upon what state you're from, some people NAFTA was beneficial, and places like Ohio said it hurt them. Texas said it helped them, and so this saying it hollowed out the middle class, it depends upon what state you're talking about, and so that was also one of the issues.
Well, I think it's more complex. I hear your point on that, and I've opposed some of the tariffs, for example, on tomatoes for Mexico. But I just was in Mexico meeting with President Sheinbaum, and they'll tell you in Mexico one of the consequences of NAFTA was that it totally annihilated farmers, corn farmers in Mexico. And my view is that NAFTA, as it was passed, was too much of a handout to corporations. They got to have this international dispute settlement where workers' rights weren't protected, the labor rights weren't protected, union rights weren't protected, and it hurt the working class both in the United States and in Mexico. And, you know, there were a lot of progressive Democrats who were opposed to that. But my point about NAFTA and China into the World Trade Organization and the deregulation of trucking is it's not like the Democrats have had a perfect record over the last 30, 40 years on working class issues. And we should acknowledge that, and we should work to build trust back with the Teamsters and with the unions we've lost. I mean, I didn't realize why that was such a controversial thing to say, look, we've lost certain working class voters. We've got to redouble our effort to build trust.
But this is where this is where I believe GOP lies plays a part in this here. We talked about the pensions of Teamsters. That was $36 billion. That was $36 billion. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm Vice President Kamala Harris and I cast the deciding vote to save $36 billion in Teamsters pension, You damn Skippy, I expect him to endorse me for president, and O'Brien didn't do that. And so the thing for and when I hear, and this is why I need specifics, because Bernie Sanders says the same thing. Oh, Democrats have abandoned the working class. I'm trying to understand it. If I had to hold up policies that have been passed by Democrats versus Republicans, let's say in the past 20 years, in terms of working class, I dare say Republican policies have done more damage to the working class, yet Republicans, they message as if they are the great saviors of the working class. So if we're talking about nationally, what 3 to 5 very specific items would you say that Democrats need to do to appeal to the working class? And let's be real clear, we talk about the working class, unfortunately, mainstream media, and they normally are talking about white workers. So what are those specific issues? What do you want to see actually passed that speaks to working class voters?
Well, first of all, let me acknowledge your point that Democrats have been better for the working class than Republicans. But the point is that neither party has prioritized the working and middle class enough, and that's why income inequality is soared. Secondly, it is just factually untrue that when we talk about the working class being hurt, that's the white working class. The black working class has been hurt, in many cases, worse with deindustrialization. I was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was talking to two African-American men who lost their jobs at Master Lock in 2022 because of the NAFTA and those jobs going offshore. So the deindustrialization has hurt not just places like Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or Warren, Ohio. It's also hurt places like Milwaukee. It's hurt places like Dayton. It's hurt places in the South. And you ask me, so what do we need to do better? One, we need to pass and actually deliver on a raise in the minimum wage. Now, yeah, we tried.
But wait, hold up. But stop right there. Okay, I'm going to do it one by one. Raise the minimum wage. Republicans do not support that. They don't support it. They're not going to go for it. You got the guy who's bringing back Bed Bath & Beyond complaining he's not going to open any stores in California because they've mandated a living wage. And so that's literally what you're dealing with. And so how do you – listen, it's come down to votes. Democrats, you don't control the House. You don't control the Senate. So the reality is that ain't happening. Republicans are not advancing raising the minimum wage. And so I know a lot of folks have been advocating for a living wage, $15 an hour or even higher. And so, again, saying we need that, how then do you get that if you're not in power? And Republicans ain't going to do it.
We had power. We had President Biden. We had the Senate and we had the House. And there were several of us, including back then. I said, let's fire the parliamentarian. I don't understand why the parliamentarian was standing in the way of a minimum wage increase. I said, let's call out the senators who were standing in the way because of the restaurant lobby for getting the minimum wage increase. We didn't get anything. Now, I'm not criticizing President Biden or Vice President Harris in terms of advocating for it. I'm saying when we get power and we have the House and the Senate and the presidency, we need to actually deliver on some of this stuff. Now, you would say, well, okay, the Republicans are not going to do it. No, they're not going to do it. And they appeal in the cultural ways and other ways to whether it's standing for the Second Amendment or whether it's on the border or whatever the other issues are. My point is, though, that the best place where the Democrats win is when we have a robust economic message, the kind that FDR had or that Dr. King with the Freedom Budget with Bayard Rustin and Philip Randolph had, where we deliver on a populist progressive economic agenda, then we can win the broad working class. We don't win them often on other issues. And all I'm saying is let's be clearly for that as a party.
Well, I have to, I had to separate this here. You're winning black working class, you're winning Latino working class, you're not winning white working class. And see, at some point, I get everything that you're saying about a populist economic message, but let's be clear. White working class voters are consistently voting against their economic interests. So you can make this grand economic appeal to if you want to. That ain't why they're voting. all of these white working class people voted for Trump, and there's nothing about his agenda that's actually going to improve their lives. So how then do you target, and again, we have to separate this here. Black working class voters are different than Latino working class voters, who are different from white working class voters. The Democratic problem is with white working class voters, and they vote for God gave guns. So how do you appeal to them if they are showing you they're voting against their own economic interests?
Well, first, Roland, and I imagine you would acknowledge this, and you know more about this than I do, but we lost of course, the black working class voted for us overwhelmingly, but we lost in 2024 some of the black working class compared to how we did in 2020 and other years. We lost people like the two gentlemen I'm talking in Wisconsin, one of whom lost his job, and his girl said, I think it was Quentin, his girl had a poster say, "Daddy, I'm so sorry you lost your job," at 12. And he told me that for a young black person in Milwaukee today, he thinks the economics are more difficult than they were back in the 1960s, when we still were fighting for civil rights. So,
first of all, I don't know how old that guy was, but Congressman, that's bullshit. I mean, listen, I know people run around and they say, "Oh my God, I think it was worse now than it was then." They're full of shit, because if they weren't there, then they don't know that. And we all know how awful the economics were in the 1960s, when black people could not get jobs in corporate America, could not get any capital, couldn't get loans. And so when I hear anybody today say that crap, unless they were actually alive then, to me, I'm not buying it. But I understand your point in terms of frustration among African Americans when we talk about what's happening economically. But again, the point I'm making is this here. Democrats do not have a black working class problem. They have a white working class problem. So again, you got to explain to me, how are you going to appeal to white working class voters who literally are voting against their own economic interests? The Affordable Care Act, Medicaid expansion, ties directly into a family's economics. SNAP benefits ties into that as well. Republicans want to cut all those things, and these white working class folks, they're loving them some Trump. So how are you going to counter that?
Well, first, I'm going to answer your question. But first, on the black economic agenda, I think the Democratic Party needs to do a lot more. We need to bring more capital
I agree.
We need to bring more technology jobs. We need to bring more industry. And I think that the deindustrialization hurt black Americans, the black South, the most. And by the way, when William Julius Wilson was writing about this, no one paid attention. It's only later on, when it started to hurt white working class communities, and Deaton and Case and others came along, that the country said, "Oh, we've got a deindustrialization problem." The deindustrialization problem hurt the black South in black cities before it hurt anyone. And so I think we have to have a
Congressman Khanna, trust me. Listen, everything you're talking about, I deal with these every single day. I am not saying I am advocating for a black agenda, but that's not why you're losing. You are losing white working class voters. And what I need to know is, how are you going to convince a white working class voter to vote for Democrats when Democrats have advanced issues? When you talk about the stimulus plan under Obama, do you know who that saved Elkhart, Indiana's ass, the RV capital of the world? And you know what happened when the election came around? Them white folks in Elkhart, Indiana, they sat there and rolled with Trump over Hillary Clinton. When you talk about what Biden did with the various bills, the infrastructure bill, broadband funding, all of those things, guess what those white rural working class voters did? They ran to Trump. So again, and I've asked the same question to Senator Bernie Sanders. You have to separate this here. How are you going to convince a white working class voter, where you've passed things that benefit them, but they still vote Republican every time? West Virginia is one of the brokest, most illiterate, sickest states in the union. So when you talk about education, when you talk about government funding, when you talk about health care, and you know what? Them white folks there, they vote for Republicans left and right. We could talk about Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Florida, on and on and on. So I still need to know, how do you convince a white working class voter to vote Democrat when they are in love with Donald Trump and the Republican Party?
I'm going to give you my answer, then I want to hear yours. First of all, President Obama convinced them twice through inspiration, charisma, and showing up. But I think what you have to do is you have to first show up in these communities. You have to show up and understand a lot of the anger and the pain of communities that lost industrial factories, where their kids often may not have the same good paying jobs that they have, where they see a decline over the last 30 to 40 years. They say, hey, Rose family, they just got here. They didn't fight in the wars. Now look at Silicon Valley. There's all this wealth there. What happened to us? Where do we see our future? And I think you have to go into those communities and say, we see you, we hear you, and we're going to have huge change where we're going to actually get factories there. We're actually going to get new jobs there, new industry there, and make that connection. Now, you can say President Biden did some of those policies, and he did. He did the CHIPS Act. He did the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't think we were present in the communities enough. I don't think we did the outreach enough. I don't think it was enough of an economic agenda, and people said, hey, they're both the same. We've got to do the extra mile of convincing people. And then finally, I believe that you have to show, as in our best traditions, from Frederick Douglass to King to Obama, that we see the best of this country. And I think if you go into those communities and say, look, to be ahead of China, to win the 21st century, it's going to take all of us, and we have a vision that all of us can succeed together, and you are able to articulate that with conviction, I think that the majority of this country will come along, and that's the type of leadership it takes.
So let me before I go to my panel, let me say what I think needs to be done.
Yeah.
I think what y'all are going to have to do is do what Democrats are frankly afraid to do, and that is go to the belly of the beast. If you're a Democrat, and I've said this to Sanders, I don't give a shit he's going out to Colorado and Nevada. No. What I said to him directly when I met with him a few years ago, I said the same thing to Senator Elizabeth Warren and the others. They need to be going to the brokest, sickest, most illiterate parts of red America and literally say, y'all do know y'all are the brokest, the sickest, and the most illiterate. And show them the numbers. And then y'all got to be able to look them in the eye and say, I need the people in this room to answer me, why are y'all still voting against your interests? I need, and walk them through. Show them their health care numbers. Show them their education numbers. Show them the economic numbers. And then literally say and put on charts and say, so explain this to me. How in the world this United States Senator, and see, here's my whole deal. I want to see Democrats go to Kentucky and have town halls across Kentucky and say, this county, how much you got SNAP benefits, you got Medicaid, all these costs, all this stuff is getting wiped out. But why y'all keep voting for that congressman? Why do y'all keep voting for that United States Senator? To me, that's what you got to do. Stop going to the suburbs of Ohio and Virginia and Michigan and trying to appeal just to them. But that is what has to happen. If you're unwilling, I mean, hell, Fred Hampton, one of the Black Panthers, was aligning with broke white men in West Virginia. Broke white men in West Virginia were sitting with Fred Hampton in Chicago saying, you're speaking my language. I think the problem is, and we're going to discuss it next with Chuck Rocha, is straight up, you got too many sorry, trifling ass white Democratic strategists who don't want to have the real conversations, and Democrats are going to have to challenge white working class voters head on. You can't nibble around the corners. You can't sit there and dance around it. Y'all got to look them in the eye and say, I need y'all to explain. We delivered this. We delivered this. We delivered this. We delivered this. This is your health care, your education, and your economics. But your county, your congressional district, your state continues to vote for Republicans. Why?
Well, look, we agree on a lot of it. I mean, that's what Reverend Jesse Jackson did in his 1988 and 1984 campaign. He got a lot of white working class voters. And Jonathan Jackson, his son, is today in Congress and doing that. And I have gone. I was just in rural Nevada, in Amadei's district, making exactly that point to white rural working class folks. Now, there are other folks there as well, but I've gone to rural Nebraska. I've gone to western Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I've gone to Paintsville, Kentucky. It's not that we're not going and making the case. I think we have to go. We have to make the case. You know, there's a famous Dr. King's speech where he said that they fed Jim Crow to people who are poor and white as the solution, as opposed to an economic agenda. And as you know better than I do, that's why Dr. King adopted the freedom agenda, the freedom budget that Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph had authored. All I'm saying is, why not, Roland, when we go there, run on the freedom agenda? Why not run on the Economic Bill of Rights? Because that's going to break through.
Questions from my panel. I will start with you, Greg.
Professor,
Greg's
I'm sorry,
audio.
I'm not going to be able to hear you.
I can't hear.
I'm sorry. Here I am. Yes, I am.
We
Sorry.
can't hear Greg.
I was unmuted.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Representative Khanna. You mentioned Silicon Valley. And first of all, I think this is a very important conversation. I don't think we hear this anywhere else, because that intersection of race and class, something that's been very difficult for the progressives to manage. I know you've endorsed Brother Mamdani in New York, and your ideological commitments allow you to be in conversation with a lot of people across the spectrum of the Democratic Party. Even as we saw yesterday's New York Times talk about the Democratic Party is lagging and losing some voter registration, which I don't know what that's a proxy for, because I don't know those people that necessarily going to go vote right wing. But you've talked about J.D. Vance being the kind of intellectual cover for Trumpism. I wonder if you have any thoughts about where we are headed in terms of the political trajectory of the two-party system in this country, and the real threats that are maybe past Donald Trump as a personality. Any thoughts on what we should be preparing for if we don't meet this moment in terms of Trumpism and post-Trumpism, in terms of the threat of J.D. Vance, some of these tech guys who are trying to leverage some of this white nationalism, and what the progressives are saying with the rise of a Mamdani and some of these coalitions that people might try to shoehorn into a two-party system, but in fact speaking maybe to something beyond a two-party system.
Let me say this. J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, has a view of a hierarchy of Americans. I mean, go look, as you know, his speech. He said, you're as American if you can trace your generations back here. He doesn't view me as American because I can only trace my generation back, you know, to my parents are immigrants. And most black people in this country did not fight in the Revolutionary War. They were not able to fight in all of the wars. And so he views them as less American. And the real fear in this country is post-1965. My grandfather spent 4 years in jail in Gandhi's independence movement. That leads to the Civil Rights Movement. That leads to the 1965 Immigration Reform Act. And suddenly this country says, okay, if you're from India, if you're from Africa, if you're from a country that is not European, you can come to America. And that has scared a lot of people in America. It has scared a lot of people. And so you say to me, well, what is this fight? This fight, in my view, is very simple. Are we going to go towards what Frederick Douglass prophesied in the Composite Nation in 1869, a nation of all nations, a people of all backgrounds, where your allegiance is to the Constitution and to the principles? Or are we going to be a society that is where race and religion define your hierarchy as Americans? That is the fundamental fight. And I get that fight, and those people who say it's all about economics, they don't understand that there's something deeper here. This is a question of, do you want to be a cohesive multiracial democracy? All I'm saying is, if we show up in these communities that where people are hurting, and if we have a compelling economic message, maybe it can be a foundation to that higher calling for a cohesive multiracial democracy. And my view is it's nothing original. This is, I think, the lesson that Dr. King and others had towards the end of the civil rights movement, where they said, look, we've got to have an economic freedom agenda, an economic agenda maybe empowering us to build this cohesive democracy.
Nola.
Hello, Representative Khanna. A few things. So I'm just recently moved from California, and you may not remember, but this time last year, maybe about a month or two or so ago, a year ago, we were at a retreat together in Virginia when we were trying to figure out what was going to happen after the Biden-Trump debacle. And I remember sitting in the back yelling because people weren't talking about Kamala Harris, and me and another friend, we were in the back yelling during a panel that you were holding, what about the Black woman? So my question is, as we are having a conversation about real Southern strategy, real deep engagement, beyond just a few representatives going to the South every now and then, there really needs to be a real Southern strategy. The South needs to be a part of what's going to happen next. I am a native Southerner. And the last thing I will say, my question is this. Also, while there needs to be a Southern strategy, Black people also need to be included in the decision-making process. We're going to have a conversation in a little bit about the white consultant class, but where's the base? How will the base be included in decision-making? And what will a real Southern strategy look like?
Congressman, I couldn't agree with you more. And look, I think we have to learn. I think that the moral conscience has come from the South. I was recently with Benny Thompson in Tunica at the conference that he does every year. Why? Not because I had much to offer, because I wanted to learn. And there I was at Jackson State, where I've set up a technology program at Jackson State, and I got to go to Medgar Evers' home. I'd never been to Medgar Evers' home because of the history. Because my presence in this country would not be possible if it was not for the debt of the civil rights movement. And all I would say is this, that more people need to be open to learning about the history, to having the conversations, to figuring out the economic agenda there and the moral agenda there. And also, look, when I came on, I know Roland was going to be fair, but give me a tough questioning on the Teamsters thing. But more people have to be open about having honest conversations about race and class in this country. And we're so afraid. We're so afraid of having those difficult conversations. We need to have those open conversations honestly. We have to have humility in what we may not know, and we need to build a coalition. The great news is, if we actually build this coalition, where now you have the Indian American community, the grandson of someone who was part of Gandhi, part of Silicon Valley and capital, and you have the freedom movement of the civil rights movement, and if we build a multiracial coalition, we can actually get to a multiracial democracy today more than probably any time in American history. And that's why the fight is so worth having.
I'm up against the clock. Joy, quick question and quick answer. Go.
First of all, love that answer and love you, Congressman. Quick, what are the Democrats doing? What is your role in making them improve their message and do exactly what you are saying? You are a leader. What are you doing about it?
I think I think first, look, I'm all up for fighting, and I appreciate what our governor is doing in California, pushing back. I appreciate that that Hakeem Jeffries and others have been pushing back strongly. I mean, Hakeem spoke all during the night to make sure that the vote on the Build Back Better was in the middle of the day, and I appreciate that. But I think we can at the same time go and listen. And we need to learn, and we have to go into communities and say, what is the agenda that you want in these grassroots communities, and how do we build a fresh vision and a fresh agenda that's going to inspire people? And that's why I love traveling around the country. I've gone to white working class folks. I've been in at HBCUs. I've been to communities in the Southwest that are rural. I think we got to get out of Washington, D.C. and rebuild this movement from the ground up. And then finally, I think we've got to study history. I mean, we had great leaders who've shown us the way forward on an economic message and civil rights message. In my view, that was the heart of what Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph, I know I've cited them a few times, but they're incredible. I mean, why not just run on the freedom budget and some of those principles, which combine, in my view, race, class, and build the type of coalition that can win in this country?
All right, then. Congressman Khanna, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Last thing, when you're doing those things, are y'all live streaming those things?
We do, and but I'd love to have you, I'd love to have you come out to one of them with me. Would you do it?
You got to be careful what you ask for, because trust me, I'm going to be a little rough on them white working class voters. But
let's go to a white working class community together. Let's go to one of them. We'll go maybe with John. I've done a bunch with John Jackson. Let's go together and do one, and we'll. All
right, we'll do it, but it's going to be rough on some of them folks. So you just let me know when you want to make that happen. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.